But I just want to do one thing, which is just situate, I suppose, the connection between PIAC and the work that NAL is doing in this area, just so that you can get a sense maybe of how we're going to try and take this information forward, not just in this particular environment, but across the whole lot of the literacy and numeracy world. IELTS had a very profound effect on how literacy and numeracy was understood in Ireland, and it really did boost awareness of the issue quite considerably. But since that time, since about the 90s, NAL has been working solidly to still try and move people away from an understanding of these kind of core skills as the 3 R's. And even in terms of basic ICT, often people really don't have an understanding, like William has just given us, about the breadth or the continuum of literacy and numeracy. They rather think of it as something that you attain in school once in your life, and they don't think of it as something that you acquire throughout your life. And they certainly don't think of it in terms of that kind of spiky profile that we talk about in the agency. So people usually do say to us, my God, there's 1 in 4 people in Ireland who are illiterate, or whatever it is. So it's really important, I suppose, that we have the information coming from the OECD that this is not what this survey will do. In fact, it's not what the other survey did either. But the public understanding, and often people in various different domains understand this in a much more black and white way, which we're trying to I suppose, expand their own horizons around that. We're also, I suppose, connecting this with the National Digital Strategy, which I won't speak too much about because there's people here who know more about it. But just to say that there is concern, certainly, about people who are, I think they call them in the strategy, non-liners, people who are not engaged in the digital world to the extent that we would like them to. And we certainly feel that the survey information will provide a lot of detailed information that might inform not perhaps what's in the digital strategy, because that's published since July, but rather maybe nuances in its implementation, or maybe ambitions for it into the future. We see PIAC as an opportunity to provide people with a bit of a health check, so that people can kind of see this as something that is not just about somebody else, but rather about us all, that we can all use it as an ability to kind of check what our skill levels are in this area, whether or not we have skill loss or whether or not we have what they call skill mismatch, that people who are actually higher performers not using their skills, or people who have lower performance issues but actually are required to have greater ones in the workplace in particular. We have 3 groups of people that we're aiming all of the events around PIAC at. They're policymakers, providers, practitioners, and the general public. And we want them to try and understand PIAC when it does come out in that wider context of information that we already have, and not to see it as something that they can maybe take out in an isolated fashion and look at. Yesterday we had an event aimed at people involved in the further education and training area. There's an imminent further education and training strategy being developed for Ireland, and we very much hope that it will be informed by the results of PIAC when they come out. But other areas that we're working with and bringing these results into include the area of health, where there's a policy called Healthy Ireland, which is the population health strategy or the public health strategy, and huge relevance to that area, where people are expected to increasingly manage their own health, develop their own decision making regarding their health, often in a very complex environment. Obviously, employment makes a lot of sense. We have Pathways to Work, a major government strategy to help those who are unemployed, and we're very keen to ensure that this information is brought to bear, because there's a high concentration of the unemployed who have literacy and numeracy issues. So we want to make sure that labour market activation measures are actually appropriately designed to support their skill development, as opposed to a little bit of a one-size-fits-all approach, which we think may be dominating at the moment. Family and citizenship are other areas. So we now have a draft library strategy that's out there that I know there's a lot of interest in looking at what the role of libraries are going to be in local communities, and they see themselves playing a big role in this whole space of literacy, numeracy, and indeed digital developments. And also in terms of family, the role of parents in supporting their children's learning. And I can imagine in this particular area how this can be very challenging for parents. But the information in PIAC, I think, will help us understand what's behind some of these maybe ideas we have, or suspicions we might have. I won't dwell too much on this, but we're hoping that the information will be used in the context of what providers and practitioners will do in terms of their own work. And certainly we'll be involved in that. And I suppose finally, we're very keen to get some of this information out to the general public, that first of all, there's a capacity, I suppose, issue for people to want to be motivated to check their own skills, use skills checkers in that regard, find out what these kind of surveys are saying, what they mean to an individual, as opposed to, I suppose, maybe people who work in the area. We know that there's a lot of people very interested and motivated to develop their skills in the context of their family, their employment, but there's often, I suppose, a gap between how they can do that, what the learning opportunities there are, and indeed the breadth or depth of those learning opportunities. So we're very keen that people would make that link and kind of see there are actually some level of opportunities out there that are generally available, free to the public, and we'd love to see more people taking them up. And we hope that the information that PIAC will provide some motivation for some people to actually do that. So that was just to set very briefly the NALA scene in relation to PIAC.